Good afternoon, and thank you very much for coming in. On behalf of Veterans in Politics International, I want to thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just to give you a brief overview of how this thing works, each one of the panel members will give a 30-second introduction of ourselves, just so you understand who's actually asking you the questions. And then once we get done introducing ourselves, then you will get 2 minutes to introduce yourself and what office you're running for, why you're running for it, and exactly why you want our endorsement. Okay? So I'll start. My name is Jim Jonas, Director of Veterans of Politics International, and also I co-host the podcast with Steve Sanson.
Chris Eisenhower, Navy veteran, 4 years on the USS Ronald Reagan carrier as an electrician. I'm currently an electrician for the county right now. That's it.
Thank you for coming today. I'm Robert Faust. I'm third generation VFW. I fought Vietnam. My grandfather fought in World War I. My father fought in World War II. After the service, I managed to play baseball professionally for about 10 years. And I have recently written 2 books. I also spent 4 years in the federal penitentiary for marijuana smuggling.
Who, if you don't mind my asking, who did you play for professionally?
Angels.
That's great.
Okay.
So, good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Mark Karris. I am a candidate for the Justice Court Department 10 in Las Vegas Township. I am a resident of Las Vegas since 1999 when my wife and I moved here from Boston, Massachusetts. I'm a Massachusetts native, having been born and raised north of Boston. I went to the College of the Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts, graduating in 1989 with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science. I then went on to the New England School of Law in downtown Boston and graduated with my JD cum laude in 1995. Shortly thereafter, I went to work for the Essex County District Attorney's Office in Massachusetts up until 1999 when my wife and I relocated here to the Las Vegas Valley. I then went to work for the Clark County District Attorney's Office when Stu Bell was the DA. I worked in the appellate division for the better part of a year before making the decision to go into private practice. I've worked in some of the bigger and smaller firms here in Las Vegas, including Hutchison and Steffen, what was then Harrison Kemp Jones. Also worked with Paul Schofield and current Justice Court Judge Amy Cellini before deciding in 2003 to open up my own practice, which I've been doing since then, representing businesses and individuals, both small and large businesses, individual clients in everything from personal injury cases to some criminal defense, oftentimes a lot of business-related litigation and collections. I am, in addition to being a husband, a father of 3, 2 daughters and a son. My son, my youngest, is on the autism spectrum, so I've been very heavily involved in the autism community here in Las Vegas. I'm president of the board of directors for an organization called FEAT, F-E-A-T, Families for Effective Autism Treatment. I'm also a member and parish council member of the St. John the Baptist Greek Orthodox Church, having been a member of that parish since we moved here in 1999. And I've been actively involved in girls' youth hockey, building girls' youth hockey programs here in Las Vegas, even before the Vegas Golden Knights arrived in the town and gave everyone a shot of adrenaline with their success. I've been fortunate enough that one of my daughters plays ice hockey, and I've been involved in trying to build that and support girls' youth hockey here in Las Vegas.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. And also, I want to thank you very much for coming on because for whatever reason, a lot of people running for judge do not want to come on. So I really want to thank you for that. So my first question to you is, it's interesting because it's kind of like if somebody's running for state assembly, first question everybody asks, what does a state assembly person do, right? So justice of the peace, what exactly is it that the justice of the peace does?
Sure. In justice court, I like to explain to people it's the gateway or the portal, if you will, to the justice system here in Clark County. So for the criminal courts, all of your arraignments will occur first in justice court, unless someone has been indicted by the DA's office and they decide to go to the grand jury. Otherwise, all of the arrests that you may see on television and arraignments that you see occur in justice court first. Cases of a misdemeanor nature will stay there and can be tried in justice court. Cases of a gross misdemeanor or felony, if they stay at that level and are not pled down in some capacity, will be bound over through a preliminary hearing onto district court. The justice court also handles various civil matters. Everything that's valued $15,000 or less is handled in the justice court. In addition, the justice court has jurisdiction over landlord-tenant law and small claims cases. So for many people, their first interaction, other than if it's a family law issue, will be in the justice court. And they will have their interaction, which will hopefully be a limited one, but they'll come before a justice of the court judge.
Hello. What party are you representing?
I beg your pardon, what party am I representing? I'm actually registered independent. And judicial races, as I'm sure you must know, are nonpartisan races.
Okay, so we already understand your religious background because you understood that. But would you ever let your religious beliefs come in to a decision?
While I am a man of faith, I would not allow that to interfere with what would be a legal decision. The law, as it is written, whether it's a statute of the state of Nevada or the U.S. Constitution, the law is to be applied equally and impartially.
So there's been a lot of hubbub about bail lately. And where do you stand on it? And what do you think about bail? And how do you think it's fair?
As a former prosecutor, I used to argue bail all the time. And while bail is designed to ensure that a defendant returns to court for subsequent hearings and not necessarily pretrial detention, certainly some of the considerations have to be a defendant's record, as well as the seriousness of the offense they are charged with. So if someone presents themselves on an arraignment with subsequent offenses that have already occurred, certainly that's something that has to be taken into consideration, and a bail amount for the safety of the public should be seriously considered.
All right, so my next question for you is going to be, as justice of the peace, you have to determine whether felony or gross misdemeanor have enough evidence to be bound over to a district court. What's your threshold for that?
Well, the law is just very minimal, quite frankly. It's, if you will, on a tipping scale, just 51%, a very slim margin. I think that, generally speaking, the prosecuting office is given a benefit of the doubt when it comes to the amount of evidence that is to be considered to bound over a potential criminal defendant. I think much has to be taken into consideration during a preliminary hearing if the defense decides to put any evidence on. Oftentimes the defense does not do that, but rather uses the prelim hearing as an opportunity to do discovery with the state's case.
Okay, so just to follow up with you on that, so why exactly do you want to be a JP? Because most people don't look too highly, in the legal community, don't look too highly upon being a JP. So why, is this your first time running for judicial election?
It is. I had filed a number of years ago, but withdrew because at the time my son was just born. And upon some pretty quick reflection, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to devote the time necessary to a campaign. So I withdrew, I think, within 72 hours of filing. So this is my first foray into the judicial campaign or any kind of campaign for that matter. And I've actually had that question posed to me already a number of times by other lawyers. Why do you want to run for justice court? In my opinion, in my experience, as I said, I'd worked as an assistant district attorney in Massachusetts for the better part of 3 years, 3.5 actually, before I moved out here. And to me, that's where the most impact was made, at the justice court level. People who came in who were arraigned for various crimes, people who have landlord-tenant issues. I've volunteered on a number of different occasions at the Clark County Self-Help Center for folks who don't have any representation to come in and get the assistance of an attorney. People who have small claims matters, the proverbial people's court. That is where people get their most impact, again, notwithstanding family court. That's where they get their most direct impact. And to me, that's the place to serve the public the best.
So a lot of traffic cases have been bamboozled or swayed or gone off to the side because of the pandemic. What do you think about a person that has, like, say you got a ticket and you got a $200 fine, and now all of a sudden it's $500, and you've gone down to pay it twice, okay? And they're closed. They weren't taking any payments. They told you to go home. So what do you do? I mean, they haven't been very clear about that particular circumstance. I was wondering, what do you think about that?
I think the pandemic has caused an awful lot of upheaval in all of our lives, not least of which down at the courthouse. Short of telling that hypothetical person to maybe call me and I would help them, I certainly would think that if someone has been down to the courthouse on a number of occasions only to find that they either can't pay the ticket that they want to pay, or now the ticket is not the same amount that they thought they were going to pay, that they really do need to enlist the service of an attorney to help them, whether it's through the Legal Aid Center, the Clark County Self-Help Center, calling the state bar for reduced fee, attorneys that can offer them representation. For good, bad, or indifferent, we as attorneys have reactions that are either positive because people in the business know us and they'll give us a little bit more time to hear what we have to say, or negative because the public seems to not think very highly of lawyers in general.
All right, so my next question would be then, as far as it comes to plea deals, and this happens a lot, and I do understand that on the justice of the peace level, that most of what you will deal with is misdemeanors, but there are certain misdemeanors that can become more than misdemeanors. Okay, but I'll give you an example. DUI cases. So your first conviction is a misdemeanor. Second one is a misdemeanor. Third is a felony. Well, there's a lot of instances that I have seen that at the second level, the individual is able to hire a very well prominent attorney, right? And they make a plea deal with the city attorney, and then the judge just basically signs off on it. Would you be willing to say, hey, this is not acceptable to me because I really feel like this individual is going to do this again?
Absolutely. And going back again to my days as a prosecutor, when I was living in Massachusetts, I resided and was assigned for a period of time on a coastal community. And there was a prevalence of what they referred to as OUI, but same thing, DUI cases, where you would find the same folks would be coming through with multiple offenses. And whether those offenses were allowed to be pled down or not was something that was a point of contention, of course, in the office that I worked in. Looking at someone who's got a second or potentially a third DUI, I think as a judge you have to say there's a problem here, and you can't simply rubber stamp an agreement that may be in accord between a defense attorney and the prosecutor. This individual, be it man or woman, probably needs some more help and probably needs a stiffer penalty in order to understand that that help is required.
In following up with the DUI situation, do you think that there's so many problems. There's so much alcohol and freedom of alcohol in Las Vegas. Do you think that like donating money to Mothers Against Drunk Driving, that was a prerequisite of a DUI thing, and I don't see where forcing people to finance these organizations is anybody's business. So what would you be? What are you on all the extracurricular fines?
Well, I think that generally speaking, when it comes to criminal punishment, you punish people in one of two ways. You either take their liberty away, you put them in jail, or you take their money away. And oftentimes for those who don't have the means, taking the money away doesn't really make much of a difference. But I think to answer your question, adding on fines, and whether they are designated for groups that are trying to support a particular cause or prevent a particular outcome or not, doesn't necessarily achieve the ultimate goal, which is to first punish someone for what they have done, but also to educate that same person so that they're not a repeat offender. And simply donating money to a cause, in my opinion, I don't think that's likely going to achieve that goal.
Very basic, I guess, character question. What are some of the major influences in life?
Well, as I said, I'm a man of faith, so Jesus Christ would be the first influence in my life. I've been a Christian since birth. My parents, my father owned a small shoe store in the town that I grew up in, had a great work ethic, was one individual who had many opportunities that passed him by as a result of his obligation to his family, but never complained about that obligation and went out and did whatever he needed to do, whether it was for his own parents when they were aged or for my family, my nuclear family, when I was growing up. My mother was a school teacher for 27 years, taught me also the benefit of a hard work ethic, that education was vitally important. Both of my parents are first-generation Americans, and my mother was the only, she was the first in her family to go on and get a college education. In my family, I was the first to go on and get an advanced education, so it meant a lot to me to listen to what she had taught me as a young boy, that her parents who fled starvation in Europe and came to this country valued education so importantly because they recognized that it was the pathway to individual success and also the opportunity to give back to the community.
So my next question for you is, again, it's kind of a general question. And first off, I just want to thank you very much for coming in, because we've had an issue with judicial candidates not wanting to come in. What? Trying to phrase it correctly. Anyway, so you're an attorney. You make more money as an attorney than you will as a judge. So why do you actually want to be a judge?
Why am I doing this?
Because that's a character issue.
Sure, and that question's also
and just so you know, you're going to be on the record.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Not a problem. I think as I said at the outset, I've been practicing almost 30 years now. Started off in public service as an assistant DA, in large part to not only serve the public, but also to get trial experience, quite frankly. When you're a new law school graduate, it doesn't make a difference how well you did. The first question that I received during many interviews is, well, what kind of experience do you have? And I said, well, I've just graduated from law school. I'm not quite sure how I was supposed to get that experience while I was studying. Nevertheless, during that time frame, as I alluded to earlier, I discovered that in that capacity, in that forum, that was the most direct impact that I had as an attorney on the lives of people. I spent more than a year in the domestic violence unit in Lynn District Court, suburb of Boston, which at the time was the third busiest courthouse in the entire state of Massachusetts, and dealt with day in and day out victims of domestic violence and the economic and the physical and the emotional upheaval that those predominantly women went through as a result of the crimes that had been perpetrated upon them. And there were instances in which, with the assistance of the victim witness services in my office that I was working at, I am confident that we saved some people's lives as a result of what we could do for them. As I said, I came out here, worked for a short period of time for the DA's office here in Clark County before going off into private practice, and ultimately opening up my own firm for coming up on 20 years. I've had the opportunity to do that and to make money. And I find myself, maybe it's a function of my age, thinking it's time to go back to serving the community. And in the same way, or in an analogous way to the service that I do, either through my church or through the autism advocacy, or even for that matter, through youth hockey, this is a way for me to serve. If you're doing it for the money, you're not becoming a judge for the right reason, in my opinion.
Well, gee, you answered my next question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. So here's the thing. And here's a question I always ask judges or potential judges. See, as an attorney, if you lose a case, you still get paid. It might hurt. You might actually really care about that client, but at the end of the day, you still get paid. But as a judge, when you make that decision, that impacts that person's life immediately. So you're taking the next step. Do you understand how important judges are? And the fact, why are you willing to take on that responsibility? Because you can still continue to make a great deal of money in private practice. Why do you really want to be a judge?
For exactly that reason, to be able to positively impact the society and serve the public in a way that I believe I can based on my experience over the past almost 30 years of practice. I understand that the decisions that emanate from the bench, whether it's in municipal court or justice court, district court, family court, they do have exactly what you said, direct implications and oftentimes reverberations. One of the things that I could, again, analogize it to is having worked now for a number of years in the autism advocacy world. In fact, the group that I work for, or been part of the board of directors, is FEED, Families for Effective Autism Treatment, because an autism diagnosis impacts the entire family, not just one individual, not just the parents, not just the nuclear family, but an entire family, even the extended family. And so to have the opportunity to take the bench, to be able to judiciously make decisions that will hopefully be guided, again, by the law, such that people will have safety insured, restitution done, and punish crimes that need to be punished. Again, you're right. I could make more money if I stayed in private practice, but that's not what I'm looking to do. It's all about service, in my opinion.
When you talk about service and that sort of stuff, what it would be a great service if we would put some of these people in jail and keep them there. That would be a great service, and I just wanted to say that. There's not really a question. That's just there are people that belong in jail and wholeheartedly belong in jail.
So, as a prospective judge, what do you consider maybe some of your greatest strengths, or maybe even something you could bring to the table versus your opponents?
In this particular race, in this particular situation, not only the years of experience that I have, but the breadth of experience that I've had. I've been a prosecutor. I've taken criminal defense cases. I've litigated, fairly complex civil cases. I've spent time in small claims court where attorneys don't make any money because they don't award attorney's fees. But I do it as a function of my existing clientele or instances in which people have approached me and said, I need some help. Can you help me? I think my temperament is more than appropriate for the bench. And I think the experience that I've had in some of the service organizations that I've suggested to you earlier, especially on the board in the autism world, being able to usher matters through in a timely and efficient manner. One of the things that I've noticed over the course of my career, whether it's in justice or the district court, oftentimes judges who are new to the bench have a tendency to not remember what it's like to be in private practice and have to move through the day quickly and efficiently. And it becomes bogged down for everyone and very inefficient for everyone.
All right, so here's my next question. Perception is reality, okay? I don't know you, Mark. I've never met you. Well, I haven't had to retain your services.
Correct.
Anyway, with that being said, I wanted to lighten it up a little bit. But my serious question is this. There's a perception by the public and by political parties that prosecutors are super tough on crime. They want to lock everybody up. And Democrats want to let everybody go. As a prosecutor, when you get elected, how do we know that you'll give a fair shake no matter what? Like, I just want to make sure that you're not biased towards the prosecution side of it.
No, it's a great question. While I had an experience as a district attorney, one of my most vivid memories as a DA was actually the only time I ever got a standing ovation in a courtroom. The case was a sexual assault case involving a defendant who worked in a halfway home for developmentally disabled adults. And he was charged with sexual assault upon one of the residents. And on the day of trial, when we were ready to proceed, there were a number not only of coworkers, but family members of the residents of that home who came and spoke to me prior to the trial and explained to me the situation that was going on and how this particular individual had been wrongly accused and wrongly charged. And the default, of course, was when you're dealing with victims who may be developmentally disabled, or if you're dealing with minor victims, the tendency is to want to believe what they are saying, telling you the truth. And in fact, oftentimes they do tell you the truth, but it's in an exaggerated fashion, which may not fit the fact pattern that you're being presented with. So upon careful consideration and after discussing it with the victim witness advocate that was working with me on that case, when the case was called, I stood up and I announced, Your Honor, the Commonwealth is moving to dismiss the case. And the courtroom erupted in cheers. And I said to my associate at the time, I hope I don't have to explain this to our boss why everyone's clapping that I just dismissed the case, but it was the right thing to do. So I think that in those instances, as a judge, even if you've had experience either as a DA or as a PD, doing the right thing is what you're bound to do.
Good. No. Well, Mark, thank you very much for coming in. With that being said, before I let you do your 2-minute conclusion, so tell people why you're the best candidate and,
Sure.
and campaign contact information. I want to make sure I let everybody know that this endorsement interview is being sponsored by Patsy Brown, who's running for Clark County Public Administrator. Mark?
Well, I'm actually going to go back to your first question because I never really completely answered that. Well, and I want to answer that question, which is...
Oh, no, Mark, you have plenty of time. Just,
Okay.
you're good.
Why am I here and why do I want the endorsement of veterans in politics? Well, quite simply, not only having a number of family members who have served in the military, but I think you've probably heard me say the word service a number of times today during this interview. And it's very important to me because I think it's a part of our culture that is often underlooked, or overlooked, I should say, and undervalued. More often than not, we talk about money and fame and success, and those are the only hallmarks of what we hold up now as being important in our society, and service doesn't nearly find its way into the public discourse enough, in my opinion. And I know that this organization serves the public by investigating not only candidates and thoroughly vetting them for the purposes of the rest of the public, but serves the public in general, the veterans and the society at large here in Las Vegas. I believe of the 4 candidates for Las Vegas Justice Township Judge, Department 10, I am the most qualified, having nearly 30 years of experience both in criminal and civil. I believe I have the temperament to serve appropriately on the bench, to be able to be an effective judge that will efficiently and effectively run a docket and move through cases so that nothing either languishes on the civil side or matters are taken care of expeditiously on the criminal side. You can reach my office, my campaign office, at 59 South Rainbow Boulevard, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89118. My campaign office number, 702-835-9331. And my website, Karris, 4, judge.com. So Karris, 4, judge.com. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Mark, for coming in, and good luck on your race. So that will conclude our endorsement interview for Las Vegas Justice of the Peace, Department 10.